Hello Internet, I'm Jackie Fox. It's the beginning of spring, 4th anniversary for the global community, and what that brings our chosen character seeing a new form, Jeume the Spring Celestial. And there's a lot to talk about here with Jeume. I think one of the first things we should get started on, though, is her TMR, also looking at some of the Master and Dream abilities, as these are going to kind of show up a little bit later and synergize with things. So first, we're looking at a TMR accessory type, so basically anyone can wear this, increases accuracy and attack, along with defense and HP. No agility on this one, unfortunately, but maybe that's for the best. The buff increases attack by 40%, which is great, accuracy by 30 for both of these are for 4 turns. Both great. And then an additional effect upon each hit for self. It will decrease slash resistance by 15% for 3 turns. It's not huge, but there's a lot of people who can get up to like 80% or so that this will kind of push things a little bit over, even though it doesn't quite stack like that. But this is certainly going to turn off slash resistance a little bit. And the fact that this is kind of just adding to your attacks, any attack, every attack for the next 4 turns is pretty great, even though it's kind of a small effect. And then another thing that I want to point out here, reduce magical damage taken the larger the attack area size for self, 15%. I don't know how I feel about these, especially given what we're going to talk about with her LB, but I think I would rather have just straight up AoE resistance, because this seems like AoE resistance that isn't always all that good if it's a smaller AoE, but also only works for magical damage. So I don't know, help me out here. Wouldn't just regular AoE resistance be better? I mean, I guess this does technically stack onto AoE resistance, but she doesn't necessarily have a lot of it as it is, so it doesn't have much to stack with here, I guess is what I'm saying. And AoE resistance on Jeume, to be able to layer that with this effect, is actually kind of important for her. For her, it is a little bit more important that you find external sources of AoE resistance to help complement this. And if you do, then she can actually be pretty beefy to AoE damage. But with that being said, taking a closer look and just kind of a quick overview, Jade Swordmaster is the best passive that I've ever seen on a DPS style brawler. It's just great. It also even addresses some of the problems that I just mentioned. She's very fast if you have Dance of the Celestial on her. There are other options, but generally speaking, you're not going to want anything other than Jade Swordmaster, and Dance of the Celestial is just going to make her an absolute menace. Unless the rest of your team isn't that fast and you're trying to sync your speeds up a little bit more, in which case you might choose something else. Her accuracy, though, is not good. Even with a guaranteed hit skill, she is very easily overwhelmed by evasion teams and will need support to actually and effectively deal with evasion parties. She has resistances to Berserk and Sleep, and natively has 20 resistance both to magic and slash. So that's a really good building point, and she also has ways of at least protecting the magic side of that. There's a number of things that this unit does that other units haven't done before. But she's a brawler, which means she has a mix of offensive and defensive kit. So again, just the 1,000-mile high view. On the offensive side, she can dispel auto-revive, she can increase her own slash penetration, she can also increase her defense penetration in Viking, but that's probably irrelevant, and I'll explain why later. She has an AoE break, she has a full dispel, she has a healing power down skill, and she can dispel protect, which is pretty relevant for her. In her main sub, she also has a select multiple targets disable skill, which I think has an interesting application that addresses one of the problems we've discussed so far. We'll talk more about that during the full review. And also basically a Trinity Break style skill that's going to get rid of attack, magic, and agility. I don't really like the attack and magic breaks, but when they include agility, they become worthwhile to talk about. There's a lot of stuff in Trick Lancer, and it's tempting to think this is good, but I don't think that it's really better than what she already has. If anything, it competes with some of the things that she already has in an unhelpful way. Maybe it allows her to pierce chain with other units, which could be helpful for her, because the attacking skills aren't terrible, they just don't do as much as her skills do. But there is a physical barrier break here which could be useful for her. On the defensive side of things, she has an auto HP heal, massive amounts of defense, and ways of raising that defense. She has damage absorb that can be applied to her skills. She can decrease magic penetration and help defend her own magic resistance, making her magic resistance more effective and more important than most units, but also kind of the same for her team. She also has courage herself and the ability to increase her magic and slash penetration, but and this affects the whole team, she can defend courage, and she can grant the ability to defend courage to both of her partners. You have to kind of line things up here, but she's like Vivi in that she can pass the skill on. We haven't yet seen a unit that could do this in the same way that Vivi can do this for re-raise. Even Zidane could only do it for himself and couldn't do it for the units around him. And I think that's just because courage was in a more powerful place in a lot of ways. Also, courage wasn't being interfered with by Alaya the Alabaster, and she was a major concern in the meta. But I would say making a unit this strong is a very decided move to, like, we're gonna reset away from that. So maybe that's not as big a deal now. Maybe now what we really need to worry about is courage. And she's really going to be a centerpiece of that strategy from the looks of it. Also in her Viking, as a defensive, she can reduce counter chance by 100%. So if you're going up against somebody who has really annoying counters, Viking actually provides you a way to bypass their counters, which is pretty great. And then her LB breaks the new style of AoE resistance like we were just talking about. This is in her master ability, so she can break her own gimmicks in mirror matches, but also, and it's a pretty wide attack, not the biggest, a little bit strange AoE pattern, but all elemental break of 20%. And I think this is going to make her stronger into a bunch of great sword teams. So looking at Jade Swordmaster, this is the one you all 12 defense, 12 AoE. And remember, I already told you that her AoE resistance is quite important for herself. Slash attack resistance penetration as well as defense penetration of 40%. So this is already going to put her a long way towards ignoring someone's ability to resist her damage for the most part. This is comparable to like what makes Bradley still a bit of a menace to this day because of stuff like this. And when he set kind of a Cadillac gold standard for what an offensive skill or what like an offensive passive could be, I really feel like this even maybe doubles down on that and takes it a bit further by making it a really good brawler set. Like bringing in the AoE resistance, I think is just awesome. Just sweet. And it also allows her to stack in with what we talked about in her 140 form. From there, you probably want Dance of the Celestial because agility is king and maneuverability can be helpful, although I don't think Jump 1 is necessarily as helpful as Movement 1, but also it doesn't as often screw you up in the way that Movement 1 can as well. Movement 1 I think takes a little bit more playing with and situationally can be a bad choice, where this really doesn't have as much of a downside, it just also doesn't have as much of an upside. But the upside here is fastest unit in the game, then I mean she's not gonna have a lot of problems in that way, so that's pretty helpful. I don't think her last two passives are all that great, but Viking lore is just kind of good generically for a brawler. I'd be happy to have that on her, but also Trick Lancer lore to get another 40 defense penetration I think is probably one of the better ways to go if you don't want the agility. This is going to give her 80 base defense penetration. Giving her 80 base defense penetration, I think, is a pretty big deal and will really help her, and also help her stay out of the Viking sub-job. Harvester is the guaranteed hit skill that I said I don't like. This is also another way in which she is kind of like Varys. Oh, shit, my bad. Before we get into her main job, though, now that we've talked about passives and what you want to be using, let's talk about what her stats look like with those passives. Now, here I'm using the Dance of the Celestial to get her agility up as high as I can. Varys is going to be using a similar thing as well, so I'm trying to keep them, they're both trying to do some of the same things here with their builds, but so this is just going to show you kind of how Jeume edges out a unit like this, even a very powerful 100 cost unit, and just in terms of stat. The kit are completely different as well, and there are some things that Varys does I think that are interesting that Jeume doesn't, but I think Jeume probably has a better kit as well. It's also worth noting that this Varys has been reincarnated a couple times, but generally speaking, we're seeing about the same attack. We're seeing very similar unit attack resistance, area attack resistance. Obviously, Varys has more of the traditional area attack resistance, which I think is quite powerful. But at the same time, she doesn't have that new school layer. So I think that when you could factor that in, I'm going to end it with this particular fight. And while we're in the load screen, I want to point out, like I said, these books have been in the background this whole time. This is, if you're into more like realistic fiction, kind of angsty millennial energies, this is a good book for you. Set in 2020, early height of the pandemic, it focuses on technology that would allow you to record your dreams and some of the very obvious and modern concerns that technology like that would raise. I mean, I've often had so much trouble remembering my dreams when I wake up, and thought that I had such fascinating dreams that I've wanted a technology like this to exist, but the more I see the modern world around me, the more I see the ways that this would instantly become perverted. Not like dirty perverted, although that could happen too, but you know what I mean. Just corrupted by the powers that be. And then even further in the... push that over too far. Even further in the background, we have Athena's Chosen. Technically sits in the same world. It's set back in, I think, 2016, 2017, which is about the time I was writing it. It was looking at, you know, what advanced AI might be able to do for, like, advanced generative AI and LLM type bots. Maybe moving a little bit closer to advanced AI that we're seeing today, or maybe even technically a little bit more advanced. You know, definitely concepts like AI-based gaming wouldn't be nearly as cool as it is in that, even though it is a bit of a clusterfuck, and the designers aren't really designing very much. They're kind of I don't know. Even they can't control their creation, which I think is kind of a common warning point that science fiction should adopt for AI, because oh man, the next couple years are going to be wild, and that's going to be capitalized on most in this series right here. And the books that come after that are going to be a lot more focused on some exacerbations of modern, kind of a modern parody of modern society, AI, and tech culture that we live in. But if you're looking for more of a fun, like, inside the game, seeing how the NPCs get about and how they go about their lives when you're not playing, that's more of the type of thing that Athena's Chosen is, where the NPCs themselves decide that, you know, they have to save themselves because no one else is going to fucking do it. Which is just a lovely premise, I think. So if either of those books strike your fancy, or maybe it's gift season or something, and you're thinking, hey, maybe somebody wants me to give them a gift, give the gift of reading with one of these books. If either of them's, oh my god, this is so much harder than it. If either of those look appealing to you, then be sure to check out that link in the description, where you'll find links to these books as well as other Jackie Fox products and content. But also, I want to say, like, after I got done with the recent edit for this book, I finally got its hardcover, so I'm really excited for that. I even have what's currently an alternate art for it. I really like this art so much. Like, really, I think this was Stable Diffusion, really early generative AI, but this is a composite, like, digital collage of about 12 different images that were produced during several different series, combined what I hope is artfully together. Like, it does have some hallmarks of AI, but that is one of the things that we're talking about in the series. And also, I really like Stable Diffusion had a weird dreamlike quality to it anyways, especially in like the weird watercolor stuff that I was getting it to do at the time. So that felt like there's a lot of poetry and symbolism that I have incorporated into this title. There's a lot of little details that will become more and more, there's this cover describes the book a lot more than you would think it does, and you'll pick apart some of those details as you read through, which is, like, admittedly not something that generative AI would do by itself. Like, you absolutely have to collage together a half dozen images to get that kind of complexity in the same image. It might do something you like in each image, but those rarely come together into one good thing. So, similarly, I don't know, I just liked the cover art, and I was really excited to make a hardcover to put it on. So if you would like that as well, it's a little bit more because it's a little bit more expensive to produce, but it's a really good high quality copy if you want some Jackie Fox content to hold on to for a long time. So that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.